Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Comfortably Unconventional. I am your host, Lena Caroline. If you happen to stumble upon my little podcast or my little podcast videos, thank you. I appreciate it if you give me a listen or a watch. Honestly, I'm just a very, very small creator from a very small town that nobody really even knows about, but what can I say? I have some things to say. I already know that this chair is going to be way too squeaky and it's going to have to go. It's going to have to get swapped out if I'm going to continue to do this. This isn't going to work for me. But yeah, basically I thought, why not just dip my toes into a already oversaturated pool of podcasts and try my hand at it? I have things to say. I feel like everyone has something they want to say, and this is a place where I want to say it. I feel like I view myself as kind of a unconventional. I haven't been able to say that all evening. Unconventional person. I think I have some unconventional ideas. Maybe a lot of people feel that way about themselves. I don't know. I definitely feel that way about myself. I feel like some of my opinions and some of my ideas kind of like go with what, maybe you see like people talking about on social media a lot. And then I feel like some of my ideas and opinions might challenge that a little bit. I'm obviously not really for being hateful or prejudiced, or I don't like stigmas towards certain groups of people or certain types of people or anything like that. But I don't know. I guess you'll find out a lot about my unconventional ideas as this podcast continues on. But to get the show on the road, this first episode, I wanted to talk about happiness. Because this has been a really big topic for me in my personal life actually lately. To give you a little background, like many people in their 20s nowadays, I have a plethora of mental health struggles. I don't think that's uncommon, unfortunately, nowadays. I think just the sheer awareness for mental health in our time has just brought forward a lot more openness about it, and a lot more people are talking about it now, which is a good thing, I think. I know some people aren't like this. I like to sometimes have like a label for things that are going on with me. I like to know what's happening. Whether that's just because of an aspect of like needing control, I don't know. But I like to know what's going on. I like a name for what I'm dealing with. Which I've got quite a few names on my list of things I'm dealing with, but so I've been thinking about happiness a lot. I've been talking with a lot of people about happiness and what that means to them, and just like pondering it a lot because like I said, I have mental health struggles, and basically a couple months ago I probably came out of one of the probably worst depressive episodes I've ever had in my life. I mean, I feel like you don't really fully grasp it until it like actually happens to you. And I don't mean that in like a non-inclusive way. I just mean that as in like there is being sad, and like you do have depression struggles, and then It's when you like finally hit that one like stage. Like I almost feel like there's levels to it, kind of, because like I had definitely struggled with depression in the past. I definitely had just depressive episodes, but this was literally like this was like Bella Swan and New Moon staring out the window for like 4 months level depressive. Like I I can say that I scarcely got out of bed for at least a couple months. Like it was bad. I was not a functioning human being. I was going through it. Um, for a little background, I have worked in healthcare since I was 18. I literally was just one of those teenagers that when I hit 16, I became very independent. I started working a lot. I started paying for all my own stuff. Um, that was very opposite of how my sister was. I don't know, I could go down a whole rabbit trail with why that was going on, but yeah, I was very opposite of my sister in that aspect. I wanted to pay for all my own stuff, and I knew to have money I had to work, so I started working. Um, I would say that I was raised to have a very, very strong work ethic. My parents both pushed me really hard, but my mom especially pushed me and my sister very hard, very tough on us. Very much of a tough love type of woman. We grew up on a farm, so we were doing like hard physical labor starting from a very, very young age. And we were taught that having a work ethic is one of the utmost, like, best qualities you can have. If you don't have work ethic, you're nothing, you're trash. That's how I was raised. Um, so there wasn't really any discussion of like mental health or taking breaks or understanding burnout or understanding of overworking. Um, so I turned 18. I already had my license. I was a certified nursing assistant. Started working at a long-term care facility in my hometown. My hometown of like 1,000 people. Um, I was going to college, so I didn't work there for like 2 years straight, but I worked there. I was an employee there for 2 years, basically just kind of like working sometimes, like during my breaks, some weekends while I was going to school, and then just solid working in the summer times. It was my first pretty good paying job. I really liked it. Um, I didn't call into work. I got like, it wasn't COVID. It was getting around that time though, and I got like really sick, and I had to call in for a couple of days. But that was it. Over a span of 2 years, I didn't call in, and all was well. And then that place actually ended up closing down, or at least the department that I worked in closed down. So I ended up moving, kind of somewhat moving to the town where I was going to college, and then I basically just ended up dropping out. I was going through a lot of mental health issues. Mix that with hanging around like not the best people for me. Definitely not uplifting people for me at that time. And I was in a really tough place. I probably wasn't really attracting the best people making the decisions that I was making at that time. Uh, But yeah, eventually I ended up dropping out. And then I tried to go back. And then I dropped out again. So I was like, all right, college is not working too well. There was my first failure. Like my first real kick in the teeth. You know, if you grew up in like a family like mine, you can kind of relate to that, where you know you grow up, you're, especially in my life, like I was very extroverted in high school. I was very I don't know, like I was student council president, and like I was in robotics and basketball and band and choir, and I was treasurer for the honor society, and I was on the memorial committee. Like I absolutely refuse to accept I peaked in high school, but like I really thought I was that bitch in high school. Like I was doing my thing. I was busy and I was doing well. I had graduated fifth or fourth in my class with like a 3.8 GPA. Like I thought I was ready, and then it was like I went to college and just everything like just went to shit. And I had this idea of who I was gonna be, and I was gonna like be a nurse and like do all this stuff, and that wasn't life's plan for me. Not at that time, anyway. I ended up trying to like switch my majors like probably 3 4 times. Nothing sounded appealing to me. I'd always wanted to work in the medical field. I thought nursing was my like destined path in life. Like this is what I was made to do, type thing. And it was really devastating when that didn't like quite work out for me. So you know, I had met, eventually ended up meeting my current boyfriend, and I, you know, he graduated with his associates, and we decided at this point in time to get an apartment together, and I went back to work. I went to work at a little long-term care facility in the town where I was living, and if you work in healthcare, like if you're a CNA, I just want to put this out there. Not to get too sidetracked here, but I just want to say you are underappreciated, but so, so, so essential. So essential, so mistreated at so many places. And it's really unfortunate. I get it, because it happened to me. I was working like nutso hours, getting mandated all the time, working 16-hour shifts, and you know, just to the point where I burnt out. This was another kick in the teeth for me, because I was like, you know, I kind of picked myself up a little bit after that whole college not working out thing, and I was like, you know, I'm just meant to be like a CNA for a while. I'm just gonna work, and it's gonna be fine. Like, who needs school? Like, not everyone's made to get a college degree, blah blah blah. Then I experienced that workplace that was just like absolutely awful, and I was being worked like a dog and very, very much mistreated. I could go on a whole tangent about healthcare horror stories, but to kind of keep it short and simple, I just ended up like completely crashing, and I had to quit. I couldn't stay there. I stayed for like 6 months, I think. I started calling in a lot. This is when I actually really started to like experience anxiety, like, you know, really experience anxiety, I think, for like the first time. Um, as far as just like having it so badly that like I actually, was like throwing up and like getting physically sick. Um, and it was, it was starting to affect me being able to show up to that workplace. This was after me being there for a while, so I think I tried to withstand it as much as my body and mind would allow, and then it got to the point where I just couldn't take it anymore. Um, I left. I kind of tried doing a couple more jobs. Um, I either, I was miserable at the at the other jobs I tried to do. Um, just wasn't working. It wasn't working out for me, and I ended up moving. I ended up moving to a different state. The apartment that me and my boyfriend were living in, it was like a little studio apartment at the time. It was really nice for one person, like perfect for one person. I didn't have a ton of stuff, but just trying to like mesh our lives together in that tiny little apartment that honestly, this is just my opinion. It probably wasn't the safest building to be living in. We had our share of issues in there. Trying to remember, I don't even think my oven worked the whole time I lived there. To be honest, I repainted it, I cleaned it. I tried my best, and I made it look cute. It was a vibe after some work, but it just wasn't it. Um, so we decided to move. Um, my boyfriend was kind of able to get in at a really good job in a different state, and I was like, I'm not going to school here. You have your degree. There's nothing keeping us in this little like shitty town, like where we were moving to, a very centrally located area, right by some like bigger cities. I like had lived out in the sticks my whole life. Like I always wanted to kind of live by, not only live in a little bigger area, but just like be a little closer to some cities, because I like to go out. I like to shop. Like I like to explore. I like bookstores. Like all these things that I wanted to have access to. I never really did growing up. So that was really exciting for me. I was like, this is it. Like this is gonna be my fresh new start. This is gonna be my fresh new start. I'm literally gonna be a new person. Like I'm literally gonna recreate myself. I'm gonna move to this new state, this new city. No one's gonna know who I am, and I'm like recreate myself, be the best version of me, and like I'm gonna make all these friends, and it's gonna be great. I'm gonna get a great job. I had like really high hopes, and then I did get a job. It was a really bad experience again, and I just ended up in that place again where I was like, I am miserable going to work. Every single day I did not want to go to work. Every single day I did not look forward to being around my coworkers. I just didn't get along with them. I could go almost entire shifts without talking sometimes. You know? I ended up I ended up in the emergency room at a certain point in time. They were talking about like shipping me out to a different hospital, so I was scheduled to work that night, and I was like, I have to call in. I don't know what's going on. I might be like admitted, like, or shipped out somewhere else. Just had like some health issues going on, and I called to let them know. And basically, just for like being in the hospital and stuff, they just were like, yeah, we actually just like don't want you to work here anymore. I mean, like, they weren't like. I had mixed feelings about it because honestly, it could have been worse. But I just feel like the whole like situation was just like so. I don't know. Like shitty of them to do that. Like in that situation, I'm like, hey, like I'm in the ER. They're talking about like shipping me out to a bigger hospital or like admitting me. I don't know what's going on. I'm already freaking out. I was crying. I was having anxiety. Got all these fucking leads hooked up to me and scared for my life. It wasn't, I don't, it was, well, I don't know. I was gonna say it's not that serious, but it was for me at the time. Um, and basically, I honestly think that it came down to the fact that they just wanted to make sure that they didn't have to, like, uh, pay me anything if I had to be out on, like, medical leave. Um, and, you know, I live in an at-will employment state now. If you're not familiar, that means that within you when you get hired, you have a 90-day orientation period, and within that 90-day orientation period, your employer can fire you for any undisclosed reason. They do not have to tell you why. They don't have to legally give you a reason, and you legally can't fight them for it. You know, they can just like not like you one day and fire you for it. Doesn't matter. Until you're over that 90-day orientation period, you know, you're SOL if they want to fire you. So I swear to God, I think I was on like my 87th day or something ridiculous like that. And they were like, yeah, you know, like we're just, you know, it's too chaotic right now. Like maybe you should just like reapply when you feel better. That's basically what they said to me. That was the first time in my life that I'd ever been, you know, technically fired. Which, you know, and just like kind of rounding back to growing up in that environment where, you know, if you don't have a work ethic, if you don't have a good working reputation, you don't have anything. You are not, you, you are lower than a human being if you don't have that working reputation. So I think that kind of just like, it felt like it broke me because, you know, I got done with that whole ordeal. I had no job, no plans. It's in the middle of winter. This was like a few days after my birthday. And I just like fell into this deep depression. It was so bad. It was so bad. So months go by, and you know, my sweet and kind boyfriend is financially supporting the two of us, and I'm just kind of like doing nothing. It's that kind of depression where you like, you don't even want to shower. Like, it's a chore to get up and go to use the toilet. Like, that kind of depression. And I can't say I had experienced that before. I was like, okay. Wow. Like, maybe drinking, and I wish I was exaggerating, maybe drinking 8 ounces of water in a 3-day period. I would eat when my boyfriend brought me food. It's the ugly part of depression I feel like people don't like to talk about. I feel like you don't even see it a lot on social media, even on like TikTok. I don't often see people talking about the intensity of that. Like, I remember I remember waking up and just, you know, just like wishing that it sounds so bad to say, and I feel so bad almost saying it now. I guess a little trigger warning because this is very deep and depressing, but like I was like, man, I could just like rot here. I could rot right here in my bed. I'd be okay with that. That's how it felt. I had no goals. I had no aspirations. I gave up. But that being said, I feel like it's safe to say that at some point you're going to hit a low. I hope that not everyone has to hit a low like that. But I feel like at some point you hit a low. I feel like also that maybe in your 20s it's just kind of a timeline of failures and learning from them. So is your teenage years, but your teenage years, it's almost like you have like a soft landing pad. And then when you hit your 20s, or like when you move out and you like start being an adult, and you don't have parents or teachers or people like that, like mentors in your life, like creating a soft landing pad and being, they're the mediators. They're like, you shouldn't do that, and that this is why, and like you should learn from your mistake, and you're like rolling your eyes, you're like, yeah, whatever. And then you like hit your 20s and there's the soft landing pad is gone. When you hit rock bottom, you're smacking into the rocks full force. Like life really kicks you in the ass. And I think, everyone goes through it, I think. Most people. But I did come out of that really low point. I'm doing better now, thankfully. Part of the reason why I wanted to start this podcast is so that I could kind of like, share ideas and struggles with people and maybe connect with people that experience similar things or have ideas that challenge what I talk about maybe, but like, also to like keep track of myself, hold myself accountable a little bit. Because I feel better now. Like, I feel like I've actually started being happy again. I've started, like, I don't know, enjoying life and, like, having interests again. Because that's another part about, like, going into those deep, deep depressive episodes is, like, everything that you once loved that brought you intense joy, whether it's music, art, anything, reading, gardening, movies, everything is lackluster. You don't feel excitement anymore. You feel like a shell. It's terrible. And slowly I started to pick myself up, and it started slow. So I want you to know that if you're going through a depressive episode or you're just in a really low point like that right now, take it one day at a time. Try not to put yourself in this spiral that I seemed to put myself into when I was going through it, where I'm like, the house is cluttered. The floor needs to be vacuumed. The laundry needs to be done. The dishes are filling up the sink. I don't have a job. I don't have a college degree. Just like going through the list of all the things that I felt like I was failing at. And going through the list of all the things that I felt like I was failing at made me only want to do one thing, and it was to stay in bed. because all I did was make myself feel like shit. It doesn't help for you to do that. It doesn't help for you to compile everything that's making you feel worse into just like this, this one, I don't know, this one big thing, and just let it suffocate you. Fortunately, I started working with a therapist, and she's so awesome. She really is. She's helped me so much. And like, her first advice for me was not like, it wasn't to look at this like big picture of everything that I felt like I wasn't doing correctly, or I was failing at, or whatever. Her advice to me was to do one thing. Just take that first baby step. Get up, brush your teeth. You can go lay back down. Set a timer for yourself, even if it's a couple hours. When that timer goes off, get up, take a shower, go sit back down if you have to. And that's how I started. And it sounds so small and meaningless, but when you're in a state like that, everything is this tumultuous task that feels impossible. It feels like you'll never be able to do it. Like, it feels like you'll never be normal again. Or like functioning again. So that's how I started. And I was very fortunate because I had my boyfriend and my best friend. And my boyfriend he was so understanding and gentle when I was going through this time where I just felt so fragile and just shattered and broken. So he was kind of there, like, giving me the soft comfort that I needed in that time. And he was very patient. He didn't push too much. And then I had my best friend, and we were at a point at one time when I was like bad like this, where we started FaceTiming every morning. And she's got some like similar struggles to me, or as me. And we just started like talking to each other, and like we would just like hold each other accountable with stuff. So she'd be like, man, like, it's really time for me to do some dishes. I'd be like, I really need to do some laundry, or I really need to mop. And we would stay on FaceTime with each other, and we would just like do chores together. And because we were just like talking about whatever, it made it easier. And then I noticed that like just starting to do like these little things, just like these little baby steps, these were achievements. This was one step better than where I was before. And the next week I take another step better. And then another step better. And then eventually I had, my boyfriend starting to help me out too, where he's always starting to like, I don't know, come alive a little bit again. And then he started to just kind of like gently push me in that direction a little bit more. Just saying, why don't we just like get a gym membership? At that time, like I said, I literally was in bed for months. And I grew up obviously being a very active person. I stayed in like generally like pretty good shape, right? I've never been a petite lady. It's just like not how I'm built, but I was in like decent shape. And from the mix of being very stagnant and medications, I put on some weight. It made me feel really bad about myself. Not so much because of my size. I think I think that you're allowed to be confident in yourself no matter what size you are. You know, you're beautiful no matter what, as long as you are being healthy and taking care of yourself and loving yourself as you are. I think that's fine and that's great, but I didn't love myself like that. And I was being very unhealthy. Um, and it was really starting to affect me. So he just suggested that maybe we start going to the gym. Now, I've always wanted to be a gym girly. I've never really been much of a gym girly, but just kind of slowly we started going. We got a membership at this really nice gym. And, you know, I had a lot of anxiety about going into the gym because I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I'm going to go in there. Everyone's going to be looking at me funny because I don't know what I'm doing. But I went in and I just honestly, TikTok does have some good workouts, but Pinterest has some really good workouts, and I just started doing a bunch of research on it, and I started lifting weights. And I will tell you, this transformed me because I love it right now. We've been going steady for I think maybe a few months, and I just fell in love with it for a bunch of different reasons. I mean, it very quickly became not so much about my body anymore. Yes, I wanted to be more healthy, and that's what got me going, but it wasn't about me I need to be toned and have a flat stomach and be skinny. It became a lot about wow, when I do this and I'm really feeling like shit, or I feel angry, or I feel alone, or I feel like I'm hurting, or I feel depressed, and I'm playing my depressing music and I'm lifting those weights and pushing myself. It is I'm physically releasing those emotions that I'm having in a way that is not unhealthy. And that was very transformative for me. It is very transformative for me. So, what this started to kind of make me realize, being where I am now and trying to work on myself and do it in a way that's sustainable so that I'm not falling back into these cycles, and I'm, not letting myself completely backslide to where I was. I had this realization, and it's about happiness. I feel like happiness is kind of a hard concept to grasp. What it actually means, what it takes. It's one of those things that you aren't taught. But my kind of realization was that, well, honestly, I can't really take full credit for this because I do feel like my boyfriend has been preaching this to me for a little while now. But it just kind of clicked in my head that happiness and comfort are not the same things. Happiness and comfort are not the same things. That's crazy. Because you would think that they would be, connected to each other. But I was thinking about it, and when I was at this very low point in my life, I was comfortable laying in bed. I was comfortable doing nothing. I was comfortable not working a job, not having a career, not having goals, not having aspirations. but I was not happy. I was no longer pushing myself because pushing myself made me uncomfortable. This also clicked with me in a conversation I was having with my therapist quite recently because we were talking about... Oh, a little bug just flew by if you're watching on YouTube, so that's cool. But me and my therapist were just having this conversation recently where we were talking about how I have a history for very tumultuous, toxic relationships. I've always been in love with the idea of love. I've always chased being loved, and, I... Huge fan of reading here. Huge fan of reading, huge fan of romance. I was the weirdo 14-year-old reading Wattpad and Tumblr stories. Like, that was me. I loved passion and romance. And I was searching for it. Always. I really did want my knight in shining armor. And unfortunately that ended up kind of leading me into like these very unhealthy relationships. Where, if you've been in a toxic relationship before, you understand that even though you are absolutely terrible for each other, or, even if you are with a narcissist or someone that's abusive, there's that element of passion there because the lows are so low and terrible, but the highs are high. And we were discussing that, and I was like, I'm in this healthy relationship now. I was like, it's not this up and down roller coaster ride of emotions all the time, and we don't have these super high highs and we don't have these super low lows. It just feels normal, There is a little bit of, we get annoyed with each other, but it wasn't, we don't have the element of like screaming and like having these huge meltdowns and then having like this passionate makeup sex. It's just not. It is definitely not how my boyfriend is wired. I'm not accustomed to that. And I told my therapist that I feel like I'm trying to make issues. I feel like I'm looking for that element of like intense passion. And she said to me, that, as people with like addictive personality types, and just people like me that aren't really accustomed to receiving love and comfort, we have this tendency to be comfortable with chaos and find it easier to accept abuse than to accept love. And just being conditioned from all these relationships I've had my entire life, being in a healthy relationship is fucking uncomfortable. I'm just gonna say it. I don't think it makes me a bad person to feel like that. I think a lot of people do experience that after being in toxic or abusive relationships. It is so uncomfortable. Not just because you're not used to being treated well and you just, you're in fight and flight all the time and you're defensive and you have trouble trusting someone and you have trouble being vulnerable. It's not even all of that. Or it's not even just that. I feel like it's, I don't know, not being able to accept good and just like how, like being conditioned to like feel all these certain things and like be this certain way in past relationships, it is uncomfortable to be healthy and to be loved. And it is uncomfortable because you experience those situations, and a lot of times, I feel like if you're especially a victim of an abusive relationship, there is so much happening to you that you're not even thinking about, like, what you're doing or where you're at mentally or emotionally, or like how you're reacting, or like your emotional regulation, because you're like putting all your energy into like walking on eggshells around that person. Like, everything is about their emotional regulation and nothing to do with yours. And then you get into a healthy relationship after all that, and you're like, oh, I have to be held accountable now. I have to regulate my emotions now. You know, I also don't have an excuse to scream or to yell or to explode, because here's this person, here's my healthy partner, and they're talking to me and treating me like a human being, so I have to be one back. And you just like don't know how to function. That's been very much my experience with it. But you know, it just all ties together for me that being happy is just, it is uncomfortable. It's not easy. You don't just like grow up and have like happiness handed to you in a little box and that's it. It's not this just tangible thing either. I think that's what makes it so confusing, is I think in our minds we just like tie happiness to all these materialistic things. And I've thought this too. I'm like, man, if I had money, if I had $1 million, I'd be so much happier. If I had a house, I'd be happy. If I had a nice car, I'd be happy. If I was a famous musician, I'd be happy. If I was a doctor. But you meet people with those lifestyles you want. And I'm not talking about what's portrayed on social media, because that's a whole nother story. Everybody's always portraying their best versions of themselves on social media and all of that. But I mean like actually in their personal lives. They're having the same struggles as anybody else. They're still searching for happiness too. You know, it's very interesting. You know, I don't think I'm far enough along in my journey to say I've achieved total happiness or, you know, peace. I'm still wrestling with a lot. But, you know, we have to give ourselves credit too. Because I sometimes feel sad about the fact that I maybe haven't achieved that or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? I'm in my early 20s. And I am already doing leagues better than I was 3 months ago. And I've learned so much from what I've gone through compared to 4 years ago or 10 years ago. You know, I think at the end of the day, happiness is just like, it is a battle, but it is worth fighting. And you know, you just have to keep fighting to achieve it. And try not to self-sabotage. If you've gone through toxic relationships or just been like mistreated in your life or anything like that, like sometimes when good things come to you, you just like want to push it away right away. You don't even think, like, you don't even value yourself enough where you think you deserve it. You do deserve it. Be uncomfortable, step outside of your boundaries. I got into this mindset a few months ago where I was like, I'm just not a social person. I'm not a bubbly person. I'm just not. I have to I don't know. I have to drink to make friends with people or be able to make friends when I go out. That's bullshit. Confining myself into a box and telling myself this is who I am and that it's just how I'm wired. I can't change it. It's so minimizing for yourself as a person. Don't do that. We as human beings, the beautiful thing about being a human being is we can mold ourselves. We can learn new things all of the time. We're constantly learning. And I was like, I had to accept the fact that at one point in time I was a very bubbly person. I was a very social person. I loved talking to people. I was known to be social. I kind of had this almost miserable attitude, and I was like, oh, why don't people want to be friends with me? Why don't people want to talk to me? Because you got that RBF all the time. There's nothing wrong with being a nice person. I guess, I don't know. I feel like there's this big push for this whole dark feminine energy, dark alpha energy, how to manipulate someone. Come on. Be smart. Be on alert. Don't let people run over the top of you. Don't let people take advantage of you. Don't do that stuff. Be aware. Be observant. But you can still be a nice person. You can still be a bubbly person. It's okay to have that softness to you. Or maybe softness isn't the right word, but a kindness to you. It doesn't make you weak. If anything, I feel the strongest people are the kind ones. Because you don't let the things that have happened to you or the world turn you into this person that is just, very unhappy and doesn't have a good energy to them anymore. I feel that happens to so many people. I feel it started happening to me. I think I'm still working through that. I was always very much an optimist, and I kind of started turning into a pessimist, and it was not a good thing. Obviously, I feel I could talk about this topic for 5 hours, but I think with all of that being said, that I would like to conclude this very first episode of Comfortably Unconventional. Oh my god, if I mispronounce that one more time. I would like to thank you for listening to the first episode of Comfortably Unconventional. I'm your host, Lena Caroline, and I will see you next time.